All right, so we have learned about this really useful container of data type called list. But the real power of list comes from the ability to loop over them and to do useful work for each item in the list. So that's what we are going to talk about in this section, looping over lists. So let's get a list to work with. Let's get a list of names. So we are going to write a really basic for loop. We are going to write it out and execute it, and then we will talk about it. So here is what it looks like. We have a new keyword for. So for name in names colon return. We see the prompt change like with making choices. So Python knows that we are in the middle of something and we are going to indent inside the for loop. And all of the indented work is going to be executed for each item in this list. So for name in the names indent, let's just print the name. We press return to end the line. Return one more time to say that we are done. And here what we get. So each line printed on a line by itself. So what's going on here? Well, names is a list, and we say for the keyword for and then a variable name of our choosing. So this can be anything we want, any name that we want. So for variable name in this list of names colon indent and we get to then use this variable which is going to point to each item in the list in turn to do some work. So we get to use this variable name, indent it inside the for loop, and in this case all we do is we print that name. Now to really hammer home that we choose, and that is the variable that we can choose, let's do exactly the same thing but with a new variable. So let's just say for x in names colon return indent. What do we print? We print x. So we print the variable that we chose on the previous line, and this should do exactly the same thing. And what's literally happening under the hood here is Python is saying, okay, x is a variable that you choose. And what I am going to do is to first assign it to the leftmost item in the list. So first x equals alias. And then with x being equal to alias, I will do all of the work indented inside the for loop. So print x, so print alias. And then we go back to the loop and x is now equal to the next item in the loop. So now x points to Bob and we print x again. We print Bob and then go back and we loop through again x is equal to Cassie and then we do it. So and then it's equal to Diane and then we do the indented work. So and then it's equal to Ellen. So we loop through and we do the work indented. Under the for loop, as many times as there are items in the list, and this variable that we choose, what it points to is actually changing. It equals each item in the list in turn as we go through the full looping in this for loop. Let's hammer this. It's slightly tweaked example. So let's print a slightly more elaborate string. And again, we choose the variable. So let's say for word and names. For word and names, let's print hello to this person. So for word and names colon indent and let's print hello. And then what? Hello and then the variable name that we choose that is going to point to a particular item in the list in turn. So print hello and then the word, return to end the line. Let's think about what this should do. Return one more time to say the word done. And there we go. Okay, so well, here's a challenge for us. What if we only wanted to print the names in this list that started with a vowel? Well, let's break this down into steps. So we have this list of names. Let's use the sample name Alice. So name equals Alice. Well, first, how do we find the leftmost or the 0th character in this string? Well, we know that from before. We can use the square bracket syntax with the 0 index. So name 0 gives us the single character, the leftmost character. Now, how do we decide if this is a vowel? Well, here are a couple of ways to do it. What if we say, okay, is this a list of vowels A, U, A, E, I, O, U? Is this in the list of vowels A, E, I, O, U? Is the leftmost character a name in this list of vowels? And what should this evaluate to? A Boolean. The Boolean capital T, true. Another way of doing this, and slightly shorter, and because I'm lazy, I tend to go the shorter way, would be to see if it is within the string that is the set of vowels, A, E, I, O, U. So basically equivalent. This one is shorter. Okay, cool. So now we can decide if the leftmost letter in the string is in fact a vowel. How can we set this up inside of our for loop? Well, we are going to for loop. So for and then we pick the variable name. So let's say for name in names colon return indent. But now we need to make a choice because we only want to print if the name starts with a vowel, and when we are making choice, we're going to use if keyword. So for name in name, so in this list of names, if the name starts with a vowel, so if name 0 is in A, E, I, O, U colon return. Now I have got to be a little bit careful with our indenting. So first we need to indent inside the for loop. But now we need to indent again inside the if. But now we are inside the if. We are indenting so that this is good. It gets executed if the if condition, if this thing here is true. And what do we want to do? We want to print the name. So let's print that the name starts with a vowel. So name, remember, this is a variable that we choose that is going to print to each item in the list in turn. So first it's going to be Alice, then it's going to be Bob. So we use this variable that this name starts with a vowel. We do return to end of the line. And is there any more work that we need to do? We are done. We don't need any more. So because all we want to do is print, we only want to do something in some case, and that's it. There are no choices besides this being made. Okay, so I think we are done here. So for every name in the list of names, if the leftmost character in this name is in fact a vowel, print the name. So let's think about what the output should be. Now let's see what it does. Beautiful. And what's really cool about this is really powerful about computers is that we only had to do the same amount of work for one item in the list. It didn't matter how long the list was. This couple of lines of code, Python, takes care of applying them to each item in the list in turn. So if this list had 1,000,000 names in it, we wouldn't have to write any more code, and it would have executed lightning fast because of Python. So this is awesome. We are able to do a bunch of computation with very few lines of code, very little work that we had to do. The computer is doing all the work for us. So I think our loops are very cool. So for the for loops paired with the list of most powerful basic ideas, these are all the most powerful basic ideas in Python. So let's keep exploring for loops. What if instead of printing the names, we wanted to build up a list of all of the student names? I guess they are my students, all of the student names that start with vowels. So we want to build up a list instead of printing something, and maybe we will use that list for further computation. How would we do that? Okay, well, we need some new storage. We are going to need an empty list that we start adding items to. So let's define that empty list. Let's say vowel names. Vowel names equals, and how do we make an empty list? Just open bracket, close bracket. So we have an empty list of vowel names, and now what? Well, we still probably need a for loop. We are going to need to loop through and check for names that start with vowels each turn. So we need our for loop. It's going to look the same as before for name in names, colon, return, indent. And our condition is the same as before. So the top of our if condition is the same as before. So if the name starts with a vowel, colon, return, we indent inside the for loop. We indent again inside if. But now what do we want to do? So our goal here was not to print anything, but instead to produce a list of names that start with vowels. So what we really want to do is append this particular name that does start with the vowel to the end of the vowel names. And we know how to do that with the vowel names dot append syntax. And what are we appending? We're appending the current name. We are appending name. So for every name in this list of names, if the name starts with a vowel, append it, add it to the end of vowel names. We press return to end the line. Let's think about what should be outputted here. And what should be outputted here? Nothing. There are no print statements, so we should not expect any outputs. We press return to say that we are done. Sure enough, no output. But what is the content of vowel names? Beautiful. Our list of names that start with vowels, so we can go and do further useful computation with this new list. So the big idea here is that sometimes you need to do some preparatory work before your for loop. In this case, we had to define a list vowel names that we add to in the middle of the for loop. So building up a list, definitely a key idea that we will see a lot. Well, so here is a new and related idea. Let's say he went to the grocery store, and I went to the grocery store and I had a bunch of cost of items. What if I wanted to add up the cost of all of the items? So let's get the list of prices. We can say, okay, well, prices, I bought some milk and maybe some bread and maybe a toy and some candy. These are all prices in US dollars. And so here is our list of numbers, our list of prices in dollars. What if I wanted to go through and sum up all these prices? How would we do that? Well, we want a running total. The total starts at 0 and we will add to it for every item in the list. So if we have this running total, we need some variable storing the total declared before the for loop. So let's say, okay, well, total equals 0. So we have got our storage. Now we need to loop through the prices. So how do we loop through? Well, for variable name that we choose, let's say price. For price in prices, colon, return, indent. Now, how do we update this total? Well, we know how to add things. We know we could say the total plus the price gives us the new running total, but we need to store that back in the total variable. We need to update it with this new value. And the way that this looks is a little bit funny, but if we think about it, it makes sense. We say total equals total plus price. Take the current value of total, add the price to it, and store it back in total to update it. Okay, so this is going to represent our running total. And this is actually all the work that we need to do. So we go through every price in turn. So for price and prices, total equals total plus price. We don't print anything, but at the end, if we inspect total, we should see the sum of all of the costs in this list. So let's try it. So return to end the line, return one more time to say that we are done. And what does total equal? Beautiful. Now, I've sneakily led you a little bit astray here, because in truth, there is actually a built-in function in Python that we will do exactly this work for us. It's a function called sum. And sum is a function that takes as an argument a list like prices, and it will spit out the sum. So there you go. Some helpful Python developers have already built this function for us, but it's a good thought exercise. And the big idea here again is that we had to set up some storage. We had to set up the variable total that would store our running total before the for loop, and we updated it inside the for loop. So keeping a counter is another big common idea. Okay. So lists and loops, two really important concepts that when put together are really a powerful aspect of programming. And I think this is actually the hardest concept for first-time programmers to really become comfortable with. So now is a really good time to just take a break and digest this material and go through some of our practice problems on lists and loops.